A little drink real quick too. Hold on 1 second. Right. Alrighty. Let me make sure to get this video up and running. Get my cord in place. Well, I guess we do got a quick minute. For those coming in, me and Fuzz are just finishing something up, but we'll get started as soon as we see somebody hop into the room, or either somebody hops into the room, or we will, or at about the 2 minute mark. So go on ahead and finish your question for me, Fuzz. What you were going into?
Okay. When that just like you said, hold that. I was just thinking, it's like, oh wait, I guess till after we're done. But okay.
Well, I figure we got a quick minute before we get started. I'm still getting a couple things up on the screen.
So here's John 14:15-21. If ye love me, keep my commandments, and I will pray the Father, and he shall give you another comforter, that he may abide with you forever. So this is the Spirit, like, being given to people once, well, given to Israel once he passes. And Paul is saying that you're essentially, like, without death, you're being freed from the law. When, if you keep on going down to verse 21 of John 14, how I says, he that hath my commandments and keep them, he it is that loveth me, and he that loveth me shall be loved of my Father, and I will love him and will manifest myself to him.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like a contradiction.
Why does it sound like a
Or am I
contradiction to
understanding
you?
it wrong?
No, I'm going to ask you, why does it sound
That
like a contradiction? Which part in there sounds like a contradiction to you? And I'll see if I can elaborate.
with Paul saying, wherefore, my brethren, ye also are become dead to the law by the body of Christ, that ye should be married to another, even to him who is raised from the dead, that we should bring forth fruits unto God. Like becoming dead to the law by the
Well,
body of Christ dying.
well, yeah, that's why I said that. That's where you get into some of the nuances between um, Christianity and antinomianism, and more in line with the belief we believe in. Whereas, going back to uh, Matthew 5, where it tells you to no jot or no tittle. So all it is just a misunderstanding there. And I guess we'll go on ahead and get us started. I see Misha is in the building. How we doing, brother Misha? We got somebody else in here also. Make sure to say hello if it's your first time. And you're here in a genuine good spirit, here just to learn. That's fine. Or if you have correction for us, also we are willing to listen. Um, it says that we need to be like babes, and a baby is innocent and pure in their understanding and knowledge, so they take the time to learn and listen instead of being like an adult. Most adults have so much pride, they're not willing to learn, not able to be wrong. So That said, we're going to first get started. First and foremost, want to give, forget, I'll just say it in Paleo Hebrew. Kahala Yahweh by Hashem Yahweh Shai, giving all honor and glory to our Heavenly Father, Yahweh, through his Son, Yahweh Shai, which the world knows as the man Jesus Christ. Um, and, I'll try to make sure to always keep in mind everybody is not as steeped in, in the beliefs or understandings that we do. So instead of going into reading into terms which you guys are not going to be as familiar with, I'll make sure to always remind folks too. We might have some Gentiles out there also, so make sure to remember to give it to them, meet everybody where they are. That said, let's where we left off here last week. The Captain Malak of Alpha Omega Clan was going into this documentary called Whited Out 4. In this documentary, at this point right here, he is bringing up um, notes by different scholars at the time. This is from Mr. James Adair. I'm not sure exactly where this part is, but I'll go ahead and read this portion just in case he's, in the middle or towards the bottom. That way we can have, a full understanding of where he's at before we get going in there. So it says, View of the Hebrew, Ethan Smith, 1825, page 89 through 90. Their language appears clearly to be Hebrew. In this, Dr. Edwards, Mr. Adair, and others were agreed. Edwards, having a good acquaintance with their language, gave his reasons for believing it to have been original Hebrew. Both he remarks, both he, I guess, both he remarks are found without prepositions and are formed with prefixes and suffixes, a thing probably known to no other language. And he shows that not only the words, but the construction of phrases in both have been the same. Their pronouns, as well as their nouns, Dr. Edwards remarks, are manifestly from the Hebrew. Mr. Adair is confident of that fact, that their language is Hebrew and their laconic, bold, and commanding figures of speech. He notes as exactly agreeing with the genius of the Hebrew language. He says that after living 40 years among them, and I wanted to emphasize that he lived 40 years among them because I hear people all the time, a friend of mine who rejects this information, which I don't get why he's such in resistance to the possibility that he could be a Hebrew, but he's very resistant to this possibility, even though many scholars are saying things like this. So this man who lived amongst these tribes, who spoke fluent Hebrew, is saying that he's seeing a parallel and a similarity. But I guess people would prefer to believe that, you know what, the natives actually just walked all the way across ice to the Americas for some strange, weird reason, and just knew that there was going to be land over here and found some way to find food. And of course, you guys get that I'm mocking the land bridge theory. I think anybody who believes that is kind of ridiculous, and it's literally just a theory. They've never been able to prove it, but the possibility that people could have actually sailed on ships over here from the east, and there are actual currents which make it easy to get across here, is so hard for people to understand. Mind boggles me. But let me continue. It says, he says, after living 40 years among them, he obtained such knowledge of the Hebrew idiom of their language that he viewed the event of them having for more than two uh, millenniaries, and without the aid of literature, preserved their Hebrew language so pure uh, to be but little short of a miracle. So this man is basically going in here saying that I spent 40 years around these people. Their language is Hebrew. It is a form of Hebrew. Now, I guess maybe somebody can feel that this guy had something to gain on somehow the Native Americans being Hebrew, which I don't get. James Adair, from what I from what I remember, I believe he's an Irishman, so I don't get why how he's benefiting off of that. But whatever, let's continue. Let's go ahead and get into the video.
The same. Their pronouns as well as their nouns, Dr. Edward remarks, are manifestly from the Hebrew. Moving down here. He says that after living 40 years among them, he obtained such knowledge of the Hebrew idiom of their language that he viewed the event of their having for more than two millenaries, and without the aid of literature, preserved their Hebrew language so pure to be but little short of a miracle. So throughout the course of time, the dialect did change, but its very root and nature was the same. Next slide. Here we go. Go back. A table of words and phrases is furnished by Dr. Baudelaire, Adair, and others, with several added from good authority to show how clearly the Indian language is from the Hebrew. Some of these Indian words are taken from one tribe and some from another. So you have the English rendition, Jehovah. In Indian, they pronounce the name Yehovah.
So let's clarify what he's saying there. He's saying that, he's not making it as if the Indian language is just one basic language, like English is one language. He's saying that this is from different, of course, different tribal languages, but he's able to find roots of Hebrew through these various different tribes. Just wanted to clarify that and point that out. So, are we saying every single tribe is? Not necessarily. So for some people who say, well, but my tribe doesn't say this way, and so no, there's no possible way. Well, how do you explain these other tribes though? What are you going to say about these people? Are you going to say that they can't be? I would push back. But let's or did you have anything before I continue?
I was actually gonna pull up something from Lost Tribes and Promised Lands that caught my attention. That I had remembered. That it's been a long while since I was reading it, but yeah, you were mentioning Indians and their language being connected to Hebrew. And I had wanted to read a snippet, but like I took a while to find it. But I have it right here.
Yeah, if you have it, go on ahead before we get started.
All right. This is Lost Tribes and Promised Lands, chapter called "A Lost Tribe Discovered in New York." So, waving a banner high in the air, the Indian guide soon was greeted by a puff of smoke far beyond the other bank of the river. In response to his signal, the two men waited. Eventually, a canoe appeared bearing three men and a woman, all of them Indians, to the place where Francisco and Montesinos were standing at the water's edge. The woman got off and spoke to Francisco in an Indian tongue that Montesinos could not understand, although he could perceive that he was being identified in the conversation. She then turned to her male companion to explain the situation. Upon hearing her words, they rose, went over to Montesinos, and to his utter astonishment said, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Elohemu, Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. They had recited in Hebrew the fundamental credo of Judaism.
Wow, I remembered hearing this source, but I couldn't remember who it was from, where it was from. I knew that, and I'd been searching for that for a long time to try to bring that out. And wow, that's amazing that you were able to run across that and bring that up. Perfect, because
It was,
I was sitting there while you were saying it. I exactly knew what you were saying, and that's what I'm saying. For those people who say the natives are not Israelites, I don't get where you guys are getting this, or is your do you believe more in the supposed white man than your own ancestors? Because that's what it's sounding like to me.
Just a little more. Here's the kicker.
Oh, Fuss. Misha was wondering what's the name of that book because I want to know also.
Lost Tribes and Promised Lands. That's the name of the book by Ronald Sanders.
Yes. Okay.
All right, a little bit more. Here's the kicker. Continuing. A brief conversation then ensued in their common ancestral tongue, according to Montesinos, whose fluency in it is almost as perplexing to the reader of his narrative as is that of his three mysterious new companions. They told him that they were themselves of the tribe of Reuben, and that the tribe of Joseph lived on an island nearby.
Whoa. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. I don't think I've ever read that part because according to the 12 tribes chart, Reuben, where Reuben is said to have been, that would be in the southeast. Um and that would be kind of areas of Georgia, Florida, back in those times. An island not very far away from there, which it says Joseph, that
Puerto
would
Rico
be Puerto Rico,
and
which
Cuba.
yeah, which yeah, and Cuba, which when you're saying that he's I mean, so that's that right there. And what year is that source from? Because that's basically giving credence to the 12 tribe chart being correct.
Let me find out really quick.
Yeah, because and that's what I try to tell people. I mean, there are scholars who have done this types of research. I mean, there are presidents who have literally came out saying this stuff, and then I hear people literally trying to debunk the information. And the funny thing about it is some of this debunking and stuff that has went on has literally been from some of the people that you shouldn't trust at all, which is mind-boggling to me that people are taking the word of some of these people. You know, for instance, I'm trying to remember the stone which they had in the museum. I think it's the Back Creek stone, which was in a museum, which they kept in there upside down all these years. And then somebody who spoke Hebrew walked right in and was like, hey, you guys got that upside down, and flipped it right upside down. And this is some of the stuff which is literally sitting in the bottom of this. Well, this one I think is on display now, but it goes into a lot of these artifacts which are literally being stored at the bottom of the Smithsonian. But go ahead, first.
Book was published in February 1st, 92.
1992. Okay. All right. So did you have a little
the
more?
Source a lot older. But
Well, I'm pretty sure the source is probably older, but
yeah,
that book itself is probably 92.
No, that's yeah, for sure. Let me see. Yeah, it's gonna take me some time to find it. I haven't gone through all of that.
We'll take your time. I'll put the video back on. Yeah, I'll put the video back on. Take your time. Because he was going into just certain words here, which looked very interesting to me.
We say Yahweh. Coincidence though, right? God. In the Indian they say Ale. In Hebrew Chaldaic, Alim or Lahayim. English, Jah. And the native, Yah or Wa. See that? Shiloh, Shilu, Shiloh. Heavens, Kamim, Shamim or Shemayim. In English, Father. In the Indian language, Abba. In the Hebrew language, Abba. In the English, man. In the Indian, Ish or Ishte. In the Hebrew, Ish. woman. In the Indian language, Ishto. In the Hebrew, Ishto. English, wife. Hebrew tongue, Awa. Hebrew, Ewe, or Eve.
Keep going.
Oh, Jerome messing up my presentation like he messed up my shawls.
Oh, you give a bell for that? Now we gotta make sure, because some people said the stuff freeze, so we gotta make sure we on it. All right, let's go back. Let's make this happen.
I'm just gonna skip down a little bit. Yeah, next slide, next slide. Here we go. Winter in English. Winter. In the Indian, Korah. In the Hebrew, Korah. As you can see the list of these words. The Indian language is the same as the Hebrew language. Arat, Haimau. Indian, Ararat. In the Hebrew, Ararat. Same thing. Next slide. Now, North American Indian account of Jacob and Israel. Now we're getting to their oral traditions. Dr. Boldenay assures us that two ministers of his acquaintance informed him that they, being among the Indians away toward the Mississippi, the Indians there who never before saw a white man, because you have a lot of people that say the white man, the white Christians taught these Indians these customs that were found that are found in the Bible. But here we say who have never before saw a white man, informed him that one of their traditions was a great while ago they had a common father who had other people under him, that he had 12 sons by whom he administered his government. But the sons, behaving silly, lost this government over to other people. This sounds like the nation of Israel, 12 tribes, using their power due to breaking the Most High's laws. This, the two ministers conceived to be a pretty evident traditionary notion concerning Jacob and his 12 sons.
Yeah.
Coincidence? I think not. Come on. Indians, Israelite customs not learned from white men. Same book, Colonel Smith gives an account of an old Indian king, Okani Khan, who died in 1681. To a proprietor of New Jersey, then with him, he said, as he was about to die, there are two ways, a broad and a straight way. The worst and the greatest number go in the broad way. The best and the fewest go in the straight way. Once again, if you're practicing Hebrew Israelite, that statement sounds very familiar. Does not the Most High say? Say it again.
Go through the narrow way, because the broad way everyone goes through. It's more simple.
Say it louder.
Go through the narrow way because it's harder, and the simple way is the broad way, which everyone goes
Because
through.
you paraphrase it beyond point. Next slide. It's still freezing.
So
Sorry, I didn't realize I was on mute. Got a lot of background noise, so I've been trying to mute it so that you guys don't have a lot of distraction. But what I wanted to say is, I guess for time's sake, he was trying to kind of paraphrase it and kind of keep moving. But I want to show you guys why. I don't know if you guys saw my reaction. Why that perked me up. Do you know which scripture I'm looking for, Fuzz?
No,
Dang,
sorry.
I didn't bring my Bible again. Hold on a second. I'll have to type it in. Oh, wait a minute. I stood on my phone real quick. Because what he was alluding to is a very famous scripture. This would be Matthew 7 and 13. So, and it reads
Matthew 37 and 14.
No, 7 and 13.
Matthew 7 and 14. All right.
13.
Here's Book of Matthew. Here's Book of Matthew, chapter 7 and verse 14.
13.
Oh, 13. Sorry. Enter ye in at the straight gate, for wide is the gate, and broad is the way that leadeth to destruction, and many there be which go in thereat.
All right, and I have it in the New Living Translation, in case that gets a little wonky for some people. Or actually, I'll read it a couple of translations. Here's Matthew 7 and 13 in the NIV, New International Version. Enter through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. So it's talking about the wide path is the path to destruction, the narrow path is the path to salvation. Let's read it in one more. Let's go with I'll go with the NLT. You can enter God's kingdom only through the narrow gate. The highway to hell is broad, and its gate is wide for the many who choose that way. And so what that is going into is many people are going to follow the wide path. And how we see it is how many billions of people who are Christians? If there are billions of people who are Christians, then obviously they are not on the narrow path. I see Kelly's in there. Says, hey fam, resident atheist here, just popping in to say hi, show some love, and a vote for the algorithm. Thank you. We do appreciate it, Kelly. But we're gonna get back into the video. This is gonna be, because this one is gonna be more video than us going into a lot of scripture. These Captain Malak does a good job in his presentation, and then I have a couple other videos lined up also, and occasionally we'll toss a little scripture, but this is going to be more scientific and more archaeologically based to back up our claims, because I have faith, my brother Fuzz has faith, but this is to show to those who do not have faith. And so for an atheist, this would be perfect. So let's get back into the video.
They say, go ahead.
Also, story of Aaron's rod told by the Indians. Mr. Adair informs that the Southern Indians have a tradition that their ancestors once had a sanctified rod which budded in. There you go. Mr. Adair informs that the Southern Indians have a tradition that their ancestors once had a sanctified rod which budded in one night's time, which seems a tradition of Aaron's rod. Now, is that in scripture? Of course. Numbers chapter 17, verse 7. And Moses laid up the rods before the Lord in the tabernacle of witness. And it came to pass that on the morrow, Moses went into the tabernacle of witness, and behold, the rod of Aaron for the house of Levi was budded, and brought forth buds and bloomed blossoms, and yielded almonds. Here goes another oral story that was handed down to the natives from their forefathers. So we have the story of the patriarchs, Jacob and his 12 sons, and now we have the story of Aaron's rod passed down amongst the Native Americans. Come on. Video, let's go.
Hold on, let me make sure, because I got people saying that it's freezing up. We got the Ethernet in, so I don't know why it's freezing up for them.
Let me
Other people
stop
saying
here real
it's good, so
quick.
they're just getting a bad connection.
Hold on a second. And yes, Signs there. Glad to see you in here, brother. Says supposedly the Mormons have brass plates from Jerusalem that were buried with gold plates, proving Native Americans were cursed Israelites. That I have not. I've heard that claim definitely. I'm one of those people where I look at it like this. I won't confirm or deny it because I haven't seen it. So I kind of leave that in the realm of it's possible. I don't automatically rule it out. But one thing I can say is that one thing the Mormons, don't get me wrong, let's put this out here first, disclaimer. I think that the Book of Moriah and a lot of their beliefs are completely wrong. I do not agree with that. But a lot of the Mormon churches spend a lot of money in archaeology, and archaeology is considered a firsthand eyewitness. And so there are some which is okay, this isn't correct, that's not correct, but there's been plenty of it which has been found to be um, correct in actual, real artifacts. And the fact that you have Hebrew artifacts predating, Europeans into America, that has to be an explanation. So either you believe the Native Americans are not Israelites, but the Israelites who were there dealing with them and interacting with them or teaching them things. So one way or another, I mean, I don't know how people come to their conclusions on what they believe, but I will let them, go into, that understanding. Independent Dude says, does everyone in here really believe the natives and Latinos are Israelites? Latinos are Southern Europeans, LOL, unless you're talking about the mestizos who are the post-Columbian. We're not talking about when the Europeans came over. We're talking about, and here's another thing. If you just do the pure math, Europeans who came over and colonized this area, there wasn't that many of them. In order for somebody to believe that like all the the indigenous people here are all have, or like 50-50 of European blood, that does not even add up. I mean, you look into Europe just in general with the what is it, with the fertility rates. There's always been a problem with European fertility. So to believe that, yes, they just literally just impregnated and created a whole new race of people over here doesn't even match up with science. Am I saying that every single person of and I'm making a differentiation between natives and Spaniards. That's not the same thing. We're talking about two different people. So so we're not. It says unless you're talking about the mestizos who are all post-Columbian. Yeah, it's not. Yeah, but the Bible doesn't go by mixed populations. Another thing, it goes by the seed of your father. So, just to kind of get you into what we're talking about here. Yes, there's there's not going to be anybody who's going to be both of their parents are exactly Israelites. Well, it's possible, but that's not what the Bible goes by. So, I mean, it goes by a bunch of different things. I'm just going on colloquial overall that a lot of the natives in this population, how these people got to this side of the earth, is that they are descendants for the most part.
So Independent Dude should check out part 1 of our
Yeah.
video where we cite Columbus de Castro, History of the Caribbean from 1492, detailing the Spanish invasion, as well as corroborating that with Bartholomew de la Casa's short account of the destruction of the West Indies, on fitting the Bible prophecy for Latinos and natives both suffering under those curses, which would make them be part of the signs and wonders, serving that they are Israelites. And also keep the following scripture in mind. This is from 2nd Maccabees chapter 6, verse 6. Neither was it lawful for a man to keep Sabbath days or ancient feasts, or to profess himself at all to be a Jew. And in the day of the king's birth every month they were brought by bitter constraints to eat of the sacrifices. And when the feast of Bacchus was kept, the Jews were compelled to go in procession to Bacchus carrying ivy. There went out a decree to the neighboring cities of the heathen, by the suggestion of Ptolemy against the Jews, that they should observe the same fashions and be partakers of their sacrifice. And whoso would not conform themselves to the manners of the Gentiles should be put to death. Then might a man have seen the present misery. So what that goes into is how they were oppressed and forced into a way of life that wasn't their own, and from generation to generation, they would lose bits and pieces of their identity until you get the common belief that you have now, independent dude, that they are considered Southern Europeans.
Yeah, well, and I'll read this one comment because I think, well, also I got to remember, you know, to not pay as much attention when people just hop into the middle of something and haven't paid attention to anything that's been going on thus far. Um, I don't know what BOM is, a fraud, and I don't know Black Israelite teaching either. Apparently, you don't, and you have not paid attention to any of this or what went on before. We have not only went on; we have been showing literal sources of people who are Native Americans and people who have been immersed in Native American cultures going back hundreds of years ago, showing similarities in language. Language is not something which is just made up or fabricated. So, no, and we're not going off of Book of Mormon, where I said archaeology, language. You can learn a lot from these different things. Says people need to stop culture vulturing on our history and cultures. Saying that Native Americans are Israelites would not be stealing from your culture. That would be actually explaining your culture. So I think you're getting a lot of things conflated and mixed up. I follow my own Navajos. That you don't need to. Maybe this might not be the segment for you, but I'm going to get back to our lesson and go back into. I'm going to get back into these sources and stuff like that. So that's fine and dandy. It also doesn't say every single tribe is. You could believe whatever you want to believe. Just to throw out there, I know you see darker skin, but I do have Native ancestry also, and even to some of my family's language books. And I've been able to see the Hebrew ties. So you could take that and do whatever you want with it. I don't know for your tribe in particular. So let's continue.
Over there on their end. All right.
Many are saying that the Native American Indians are Israelites because they wore fringes, and that they found fragments of the Hebrew language on a rock. I say, so what? Does that trump the word? The Japanese, Chinese, Spanish, and French, and even some of the people in the Middle East had fringes. Does that make them descendants of Israelites because they had some fringes? Of course not.
So here we go with the rhetoric. Does that make them Israelites because they wear fringes? Now, granted, in ancient times, you had the Syrians as well who wore fringes. You had certain Hamitic tribes that wore fringes. But when we read in scripture, the Most High gives very explicit detail as to how we're supposed to wear our fringes. He specifically told us to have a ribbon of blue, a border of blue, excuse me. So not every nation had a border of blue along with their fringes. That was something specific, according to the Torah, to the Hebrew Israelites. So whenever you're ready to put up that slide.
Well
Play
said.
that video again, one more time.
Many are saying that the Native American Indians are Israelites because they wore fringes, and that they found fragments of the Hebrew language on a rock. I say, so what? Does that trump the word? The Japanese, Chinese, Spanish, and French, and even some of the people in the Middle East had fringes. Does that make them descendants of Israelites because they had some fringes? Of course not.
So he says, So what if they have fringes? So what if there was fragments of Hebrew on rocks in the Americas? He says, so what? That shows the mindset of a man who does not do real research and study. Because if you're a scholar, if you're a real researcher, then you have to look into these things. Okay, if there are Hebrew artifacts, if there are fringes found amongst them, okay, let me see what that's about. What did it mean to them? So for him to brush it off, this is a biased researcher. So he said, so what if they had fringes? Does that make them Israelites? A lot of ancient cultures had fringes as well. But not all of them had blue borders of fringes. Like I said, that was specific to the Hebrew Israelites. Let's prove it. Next slide.
Hi, Ali.
What's going on, Joel?
Hold on. For some reason, this stuff is not showing full screen for the people. All right, next slide.
Come. Now, native dress code is that of the Israelites. He said, so what they had fringes? Well, we see fringes with blue borders. Numbers 15:38. Someone read that.
Numbers chapter 15, verse 38. Speak unto the children of Israel and bid them that they make them fringes in the borders of their garments throughout their generations, and that they may put upon the fringe of the borders a ribbon of blue.
A ribbon of blue. So they did not just have fringes, they have fringes with the border of blue. Next slide. Here we go. Now, all these dresses that I'm showing are all in museums. So you can see fringes again.
And I wanted to stop this for a minute because I want to why highlighting on the fringes and the border of blue so much. The reason why is because in Hebrew, the ribbon of blue is to signify royalty. Just like you will find in the Native American culture, the color turquoise, which is a variant of blue, is considered sacred. That is not something that is a coincidence. So I just wanted to bring that point out, why he's bringing up the ribbon of blue. And this is just one of a few things which we could show, which we could keep going into. I mean, a lot of people don't realize that in North America is the second most amount of Hebrew artifacts after Israel. Somebody needs to explain that then. Somebody needs to explain that. Because I hear people like independent dudes say the stuff that they say. I've heard other people say it, but you explain these things. Explain why there's a 10-foot rock with the 10 commandments on it in Hebrew before Europeans ever got here. Explain this stuff. If you guys can't give an explanation, then stop being such naysayers then, and probably just try to do a little bit more listening. Because we haven't even, this isn't even much at all. We have so many more sources I can keep going to. This is just the part 2. We're about to do a part 3 and a 4 because there's more stuff. So much more stuff. Yes, many cultures use blue, but it was never sacred. Mike, tell me which cultures blue is sacred in. Please give me a source. Please give me a source. I'll start the video and I'll wait, because I guarantee you're not going to be able to find one outside of Native American culture where blue is considered sacred to their religion even. The only 2 in the world, Marcus, 95% of natives will push. I don't give, that's the thing. I know, well, I won't say 95%. The reason why I won't say 95% is because you literally have Native American tribes which are going over to Israel, which are helping them complete their ceremonies because they know the full ceremony, which the people in Israel don't even know. Explain that one for me. But that's not the point. 95% of people could say a lot of things. That doesn't mean anything, though. Does that mean that 95% of people can't be wrong? But I guess we should just go on. 95% of people believe this. So let's continue. Believing whatever you want, that's fine and dandy. I'm going on what archaeology and evidence is showing. And until somebody can start explaining why we're seeing the things we're seeing, then I have a hard time listening to, well, I don't believe. That's irrelevant.
The border of blue. If it would have been orange, red, purple, green, yellow, then fine. You can say whatever you want. But is it coincidence that it's a blue border along with the fringes as stated in Numbers? I don't think so. Next slide.
And that is a false statement also, Mike. That is all those Mormon stones have been proven fake. No, they're not. No, they haven't been proven. Some have been, but they're not all. Here, not all. But if you prefer to trust the rhetoric of the people who literally stole your country and believe that their logic is more legitimate and their research and study makes more sense, then okay, that's cool.
Here we go again. It's a little more modern, but they still use the same concept, blue borders and fringes. Next slide. Here we go. Blue border and fringes. Let's go. Once again, blue border and fringes. Come on, let's go. Play the video.
The Mexicans and mixed North American Indians and Latinos don't even claim to be the Israelites. What you do have is a very small few individuals who were recently told this lie by so-called Black Hebrew Israelites.
This chart and the teachings behind it is what's increasing the sins of Israel.
You lied to me. Wow, so you're Black Hebrew, you told me I'm an Israelite. You lied to me. All y'all lied to me, man. So here we go again with this lady with false information.
Actually,
she's not even using common sense and logic.
I'm gonna ask this question, and I'm gonna pose this. I'll pose this to Mike. I want to pose this to Independent Dude. I want to pose this to all you guys. Since science basically says that everybody basically originated in one place and all branched out, how do you explain how did Native Americans get to North America? Or do you just believe that they were just born in North America? A complete separate race of people who just came up right here. Or actually, yeah, please put it in there if you agree with the land bridge, that you believe that out of Asia, all of a sudden, your ancestors decided to get up and just start walking across the sheet of ice, and somehow had enough food to get all the way across, had plenty of blankets and everything to sleep on. I mean, that they had plenty of weapons to be able to protect against any predators, and they knew that they'd be able to walk all the way across this long sheet of ice to get to a land. And how did they know that there was going to be land on the other side of that ice? Yes, they would have walked endlessly. Exactly. And I'm like, I don't know how people even buy this shit. But apparently that makes more sense to Mike and Independent Dude, that their ancestors just got up and just started walking across a sheet of ice one day. Thousands and thousands of miles across a sheet of ice with no shelter. That makes more sense. I'm really waiting for an answer. Really waiting for an answer.
DJL7, the Chinese their biblical identity are called Moabites. So they are separate from Israelites.
Yeah, it evolved in America. So what you're saying, Independent Dude, is Native Americans Although everybody else, the DNA shows that they all came out of Africa at some point. Native Americans are the only people who were just born on this other continent, way away from everybody else. That's what you literally believe. I mean, think about it. That's what you're saying here. I want to answer. That's what you're believing, that Native Americans are the only people who just, they had a completely different, separate origin from everybody else. That like they're completely, that by that logic, that means they're almost a completely different stock of human. I'm waiting, independent dude, because you're saying stuff, but logic is not matching up with it. You're just listening to to basically what the people who stole your country have told you. That's what I'm hearing.
This is the book of Psalms, chapter 83, and verse 2. For lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head.
Well, you're dealing with people who can't hear the scripture. Their ears are blocked.
No, I know. I still feel the need to bring it out. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people and consulted against thy hidden ones.
So these so-called Israelites, boats, that's how. There's oral tradition in Mexico that they talked about that they got here from boats. That's how. What, is that far-fetched that somebody could have taken a boat to get here? But then, no, that makes more sense. No, that they all just start walking across the ice. And they all didn't just freeze to death.
They have said, come, let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. For they have
and then here's another thing. Where are the DNA trail boats? Do you believe the transatlantic slave trade was fake? Because they don't have the boats from those. So if they don't have the boats from something which happened about 500 years ago, why would you think that they would have the boats that happened from something over 2,000 years ago? Sorry, you don't follow my colonial Bible. I don't follow a colonial Bible. That's what you don't get. I don't follow no colonial Bible.
Oh, he believes that King James was a white man.
Probably. I don't. Okay. The stuff that these people believe, I don't get it. And then the thing about it is, most of the universities and colleges or whatever who teach you most of this stuff are mostly controlled by white people. But yes, go on ahead. That's who you believe. And then you talk about colonial Bible, but you're leaving white man's science and white man's logic. That makes more sense that you and your ancestors just got up hundreds of thousands deep and just all walked across the ice. Man, you're not even connecting anything that makes any sense. Here's another thing. Do you know a thing called current? Have you ever heard of that? It's actual proof, and you can still do this science today. You could take a boat off the coast of Africa, not even moor it, not even direct it, and it can float right over here to the Americas. Pretty simple science that can be proven, not a theory. And land bridge is a theory still. Sorry to break that to you, but that's still a theory. Yeah, what is science though? Exactly. I mean, literally, okay, so most of this science, most of these universities, all this stuff that's going on in America is by literally the people who stole your land, but that's who you trust and believe in most. But I'm the one who's listening to the colonial Bible. I don't dismiss Native American spirituality. What I'm trying to explain to you is I can show you origin stories and things like that in Native American culture, which line up with the Bible, but you don't know the Bible to even know what I'm even talking about. You don't even know it. You're just argumentative for no freaking reason. In fact, this is what's always been weird to me, is if that would be a bad thing to you if you were a lost tribe. Like, oh, I mean, that's damning you to hell somehow or something. I don't get their logic. Yes, you do. Everyone you bring up native cultures, you inject the Bible. I'll just ignore this person. They don't. No logic has been made in anything that they've said. It's just a circular narrative. In fact, I got another video I want to pull up. I want to pull up another video. Have you ever heard of Quetzalcoatl? Because he said that, oh, well, you were rejecting it, that there's no similarities, nothing. Okay. Let's just bring up something real quick. Oh, let's try to share it first. Yeah, Misha. Oh, yeah, by the way, Misha is Native American too, because you guys obviously just look at phenotypes and don't think that I can have any kind of understanding or whatever about the culture. You know, not that my grandmother, not that my great grandmother great grandmother wasn't a pregnant native who was running from slavery back to her reservation. I could not have any clue or know anything. It's only about what your particular tribe, what you know from your tribe, as if you're an expert on all the tribes. But sure, okay. Where is it? What am I looking for? Let's pull this one up real quick.
Now, that's Jesus Christ.
Let's back this up a little bit.
Okay, like your father's side is brown.
Both sides.
Both sides.
My mom is light skinned and my dad is dark skinned. Okay. So my dad's mom.
But maybe this ain't the type of people he's talking about, because this is talking about brown natives, and you're thinking about Europeans. So I don't know. Maybe this will be a little off for him.
Mom is white or light skinned, and my mom's mom is brown. So,
Okay. I'm with you.
It goes both ways.
So you got the shirt on, right? That's the Aztec calendar, am I correct?
That's right.
Okay, so you know what happened before the conquistador came.
And to respond to Mike, it says at Misha Key, sorry, bro, you don't rep all natives. Mike, and neither do you. That's the crazy hypocrisy about what you and the other guy are even saying. You guys are both trying to speak for all natives, and then when he's a native trying to speak, you're telling him he doesn't speak for natives. How about you guys just do more listening?
Hypocrisy.
Just do more listening. You don't have, in fact, Mike, you don't have to listen. Please just stop interrupting. You don't have, I'm not forcing you to agree with anything. You can keep whatever beliefs you want to believe. But good gracious, don't sit there and try to say that somebody else can't speak for themselves, and then you try to command as if you speak for all natives. That's just hypocritical, dude. Completely hypocritical, and you're being dismissive. And if you were doing a presentation, I would not be interrupting and being disrespectful to you. I would let you at least get it out, but you don't care to actually hear anything out, apparently.
To Mexico, right?
Yeah.
So what is some of the information that you know about pre-colonial Mexico?
That we didn't know anything about Jesus Christ.
You didn't know anything about Jesus Christ?
No. And it was forced onto us.
What if I could prove to you that you did know Jesus Christ before the white man came? It would be some new information. Give me out there the 6 steps. Have you heard of Quetzalcoatl?
Who?
Quetzalcoatl.
Yeah, I think I have. I think so.
Now, that's Jesus Christ. And I'm going to prove it to you. Give me Caesar Borgia. Caesar started one. This, you didn't know him. You had no idea who the hell this was. Okay? But you knew who Jesus Christ was. I'm going to prove it. Go ahead.
It's Isaiah 6:1.
Uh-huh.
In the year that King Uzziah died,
Read on.
I saw also the Lord sitting upon a throne,
Read on.
high and lifted up,
So this is the prophet Isaiah. He's seeing a vision. Read.
and his train filled the temple.
He's seeing a vision of God. Read on.
Above it stood the seraphim.
Stood what?
The seraphim.
A seraphim is a fiery, flying serpent. Does that ring a bell for Quetzalcoatl?
Yeah,
Right?
I don't remember that much. It's been a minute. But...
Okay. Well,
All right, let me see if I can bring it up. Fiery flying serpent. You're gonna say Quetzalcoatl is not in Native American tribe. That's not part of any Native American tribes. What am I thinking? As far as in origin stories, that's just being forced in, right? What and this is my problem when I'm dealing with some of these people. You guys don't know the damn Bible. You know what you've heard you white people talk about. You don't know it. They don't know the damn Bible. So how can you argue against something you don't even know what's going on? But actually, let me see if I can find what's it called. Or let me keep it going while I do that. Y'all think like people just woke up one day and just start saying this shit for no fucking reason?
basically, he's a feathered serpent, right? So go ahead.
Each one had 6 wings. With twain he covered.
Well, he had every one of these serpents has wings. Read on.
With twain he covered his face. And with twain he covered his feet.
2 he's covered his feet. 2 he's covered his face. And what did he do with the other 2? Read.
And with twain he did fly.
And that's how he flew. Read on.
And the one cried unto another. And said, Holy, holy, holy.
Read on.
Is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory.
Go ahead.
And the post of the door moved at the voice of him that cried.
Go ahead.
And the house was filled with smoke. And I said, woe is me.
So Isaiah said, woe is me, read.
For I am undone. Because I am a man of unclean lips.
So he said he's unclean, read.
And I dwell in the midst of a people of unclean lips.
Go ahead.
For mine eyes have seen the King,
read on.
The Lord of hosts. Then flew one of the seraphims unto me.
So here comes this feathered serpent. He flies unto Isaiah. What does he do? Read.
Having a live coal in his hand.
You know what coal is used for?
To make fire?
It is used to make fire.
Fuel fire.
Also, it's something else. You ever like a water filter?
Yeah.
Coal is what filters water. You see what I'm saying? It's a purifying agent. Fire.
Now, let me bring this up. I'm gonna drop that real quick. And let's bring up Quetzalcoatl. Oh shit, wrong one. I mean, it literally blows my mind. It's like, what would I have to gain to be trying to trick you? I don't get that.
We don't even have 80 subscribers, and somehow we're threatening to infect people with false information.
What the hell is this? Fiery serpent. This is the same thing it talks about in the Bible. Same thing it literally talks about in the Bible. But you guys don't know the fucking Bible. No, let's see. It says, I don't want to speak for either of them, but Mike, you're kind of taking the words out of context as far as how the Bible was and was used. Exactly. They all think about this evangelical, stupid version of Christianity. I'm not talking about, for one, the Bible is not even a Eurocentric religion. It's not. It was literally stolen from the East. The first council when the Bible was put together was in Hippo Carthage, Africa. It's not even a European thing. Quetzalcoatl's description is the same as Christ, a fiery serpent, but you don't know the Bible, independent dude. By your own admission, you don't know the Bible, but you're just for some reason have to argue. Good gracious. Yes, the Bible is a Semitic religion, but what is Semitic? Do you even know what Semitic even is? Do you? Oh, that's right. You believe Semitic are the curly people. Though that's what you believe Semitic is, more than likely. And that goes into you don't know the Bible. Literally, it describes the Israelites so many times in the Bible, and it does not describe them as being people who struggle with dealing with the sun. When if you look at Israel, Israel has the second highest skin care rate in the world. Why? Because those people who are living there are not indigenous to there. But you guys are just talking out your ass because you don't know what you're talking about. Jeez Louise. Well, let's drop this down. And that's just one. If you would have hopped in here earlier, you would have saw the language translations. It showed multiple different Native American tribes where the language is similar to Hebrew. In fact, some of them literally the same words. Like, for instance, the word father, Abba, might not be it might not be the same in your tribe, but there are tribes where the languages match. You got to explain. All languages come from language families. You got to explain what language family this is. You can't explain any of the origin at all, but you're so certain you know what you're talking about. And that's not even true.
Read from Lost
You
Tribes
said
and
we
Promised Land.
natives don't fight over gods. We believe we all have the same creator, every culture. Natives literally killed each other over gods. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? Some native tribes literally obliterated whole tribes. So you're not even accurate even on history. Jeez Louise. That's right. I'm getting myself a little too worked up. I haven't even blew. You guys have not seen me blow up. But I'm just annoyed when I deal with people who you have one frame of context without knowing all of these other things and have not even tried to study all these other things, but you're arguing vociferously from one frame of argument without doing any other research outside of looking through your own little glass window. Let's put this back up. Let Alizar finish the point he was making. I don't even need to play the whole thing of that. There we go.
Air in general will purify something, right? Clean it, right? Read.
Which he had taken with the tongue from off the altar.
Read on.
And he laid upon it my mouth. And said,
so this feathered serpent takes this coal and puts it on this man's mouth to purify. He said, my mouth is unclean. He puts it on his mouth to purify it. Read on.
And said, lo, this has touched thy lips, and thine iniquity is taken away.
You see that? Now wait a minute. In church now, you go to church at any point in your life?
Yeah.
So when you was in church, did they teach you that Jesus Christ came to take away your sins?
Right.
The Bible just said that a feathered serpent took away the sins of a man. You see that?
Yeah.
You knew about Jesus Christ far before the white man came.
Right.
But he came, let me see that again. He came, let me visit with Solomon 14. The white man came and gave you this. This is some homosexual Spaniard. That's what this is. It's a child molester. This ain't got nothing to do with Jesus Christ, right? So he had to come. When you read in the temple and in the pyramids that the Aztecs built and the Mayans built, y'all know y'all had prophecies in the pyramids. You know them prophecies line up verbatim with prophecies in the Bible. How is it possible somebody in Mexico is writing about the same thing that somebody in Israel is writing on the other side of the world?
Right. I believe in that. It's not just only in Israel and Mexico, but in other places in the world.
In other places.
And then I wanted to respond to another thing, because just Independent just said stuff sometimes, and I'm like, natives sometimes fought over resources and territory. What am I hearing? Oh, hold on a second. But you're saying that natives sometimes fought over resources, territory, not over gods. Were you there? Because I don't think you were there. I mean, I'm looking at this list here, and I'm literally seeing hundreds of different gods. You're going to tell me that you know for a fact that none of them ever fought over having differences in their gods? So I guess maybe the Easter Bunny is real too, huh? I mean, dude, come on. You literally had you literally had people who sacrificed people for their gods. You don't think that started wars? I mean, you're just saying stuff. And a lot of the stuff you're saying, you can't even back up or prove, but for some reason, you just feel compelled to say stuff that's not factual. Ipper says, I'm curious why it seems like almost all the indigenous cultures are almost similar. Aztecs have pyramids that look like Egyptians and Nubians. In fact, not only do they look like them, the measurements are similar. The dimensions are similar. The way they were lined up are similar. But for some reason, people like independent dude will probably just think that all that stuff is just weird coincidences. That it's not possible that they could have lived in the land next to these things, maybe even did work on some of them, as to how they figured out to build the same similar structures. That's just way too far-fetched. Maybe what it is actually, independent dude, is aliens really built it for the natives, and they built it for the Egyptians too. That's what we really need to believe. I mean, dude, come on, dude. I mean, is there any kind of like common sense going on with the logic you're using here? Everything is, well, everything is coincidences, or no, you got to trust in all this other stuff that literally makes no sense. First, we got the land bridge. You're believing basically the land bridge. That makes sense, that your ancestors walked thousands of miles across ice. And then you're believing that once they got all the way over here, they had no possible way ever fought over gods and had differences. And then you're also believing that, well, somehow it's some weird coincidence that there's a bunch of different Hebrew stuff around here. And then there's also another weird coincidence that they have these pyramids, which are similar to the Egyptian pyramids. And then here's another one. The Bible literally says that one of the lost tribes of Issachar, one of their major things would be to be able to understand the stars and understand times. That sounds kind of familiar. Who's known for calendars? Mayans, Aztec? No, but all this stuff, all of it is just all a bunch of random coincidences. I mean, I put it this way. If you two, in fact, you know what? If you want, I can even put the link in the chat, and you can hop on and you can explain to me these theories, all your theories on, and make this shit make sense. Because right now, none of the shit you guys are saying are making any damn sense. It's really not.
This is a big distraction.
Yeah, it is a distraction. Well, yeah, it is a distraction. I'll let it go. I'll get back in because he's actually showing stuff. And the thing about it is, I've been able to see this stuff being proven multiple times over. Been heard different tribal chiefs explain stuff. So to just hear random people who loosely have ties to their ancestors and know a little bit telling me that no, there's no possible way that any of these sources could be correct. Oh, yeah. Oh, of course, you believe that's correct.
Let's have them
Peruvian
sit back.
pyramids are older. Okay, sure.
Let's just
Yeah.
let's let's just have them watch things to actually
Yeah.
learn from well-scholared people.
The Peruvian ones are older. Yeah. So I guess actually, no, people didn't actually originate in Africa. They actually probably originated in Peru. That's what we're to believe now, right? That's what we're to believe. So if that's the case and they're older, then how did the people get there? Unless you just believe that, you know what, everybody just evolved in every continent. Is that what we're saying, Mike? That everybody evolved in every continent? That's how it happened? That all the stuff that proves the migrations of people, none of that stuff existed? I mean, I don't know if you've like really thought out the stuff that you're saying, because it's not adding up at all. It's just like you're regurgitating stuff you've heard, not proving anything.
Let's go before there's a part 5 that we didn't.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I don't want to get too long. But when people say stuff and they're just talking, nothing is adding up to what you're saying. None of it even logically makes sense. But you guys just keep saying it. Just keep saying random crap that you've just been told over the years without ever looking into anything.
You're basically reading about people that were coming from the sky, and it was real similar. A lot of similarities.
Similar information, right? Now we go. Number one, we're gonna read about this white boy real quick. Now I'm gonna get to that. Go ahead. 14. We're starting about what is it? Oh, sorry. 16. Go ahead.
Wisdom of Solomon 14 and 16.
Thus,
in process of time.
In process of time, read on.
An ungodly custom grown strong.
This is that. The ungodly custom is called Roman Catholicism. That's the ungodly custom. What? Read.
Was kept as a law.
It's kept as a law. Even if when they came with this image to the Aztec, if you didn't want to worship this guy, you're dead. That was the only option, right? So all the mighty warriors, what happened? Died because it wasn't for this. You see what I'm saying? So then you got women and you got children left. What they gonna do? They gonna fall in line. They don't want to die, right? You know?
And graven images.
This is right here. This graven image. God don't tell us to worship the picture of any damn body, right? So read.
And graven images were worshipped by the commandments of kings.
Right? It was commanded by the popes, by the kings of the countries to worship this image. Read.
Whom men could not honor in presence.
And this man was alive at this time. His own cousins painted this picture, right? When you research this man, this is his original portrait. His name is Caesar Borgia in Spain, right? His father was the Pope. So he commissioned Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci, the world-renowned painters, to paint his son as Jesus Christ. That's when the white man started to do what's called white supremacy. It starts with this picture. Read.
Because they dwelt far off. They took the counterfeit of his business.
That's what the counterfeit is. This is read
from far and made an express image of a king whom they honored, to the end that by this their foreignness they might flatter him that was absent as if he was present.
Right, go ahead.
Verse 18. Also the singular diligence of the.
It's gonna go into it. It's all right. The artistic. Yeah, it's all right. Let's get Salaki. What was we talking about before? The similarity. You got the point on that. Let's deal with the similarity. Right? Give me the book of 2nd Ezra 13. The Aztecs. According to Aztecs and Mayans, where did they come from? Did they originate in the lands in Mesoamerica and Mexico, or did they come from somewhere else? I want to say southern and central Mexico. Now, according to Aztec and the Mayans, they came from somewhere in the east. That's according to what they say, that they migrated over there, right? Because you got Mayan cities in Georgia, right? They built the Mayan city in Georgia. because especially what the Mayans said is that they landed in Florida and they migrated over from Florida, right? And there's literally a whole Mayan city of Mayan pyramids in Georgia that work to cohesively prove that as a point, right? So they came from the east. Let's read about it. Go ahead.
Second Ezra, 13 and 40. Those are the 10 tribes that were carried away prisoners.
So, before we even go there, are you familiar with the people of the Bible?
Yeah, and I did hear that what you're about to say. I heard that with some friends in the past that now that you mentioned, I did hear that we were brought from Israel, we were brought from somewhere else over here, and we're one of the original 12 tribes.
You're one of the original.
I stopped to answer. Yes, Yipper, that is in Georgia. That's what I'm saying. There's archaeology, tons of archaeology that back up and support these things. But if you're told one narrative, you never even look into it. You never check this stuff out. And this is stuff you could visually go and see. But if you want to be in the darkness, you can stay in the darkness. And that's how, that's how denialism works. I mean, and a weird thing about it to me is the Bible literally talks about the Israelites as God's chosen people. These are people arguing to say, I am not God's chosen people. That literally makes no sense to me. Literally makes no sense to me.
Hey, I have a tip for that, and I think you know what I'm going for. This is Hosea chapter 4 and verse 6. My
ahead,
people are destroyed for lack of knowledge, because thou hast rejected knowledge.
Oh, go on and keep reading.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I said no. Finish it. Keep reading.
My people are destroyed from knowledge, because thou hast rejected knowledge. I will also reject thee, that thou shalt be no priest to me. Seeing thou hast forgotten the law of thy God, I will also forget thy children.
Thank you, sir.
12 tribes in Israel, right? What's the word that y'all had for this land that we in right now?
I'm not sure.
Absalom, you heard that, right?
Oh, right.
Absalom, right?
Yeah.
There's a character in that word that's exclusively a Hebrew character. That's the T and the Z together. That's one letter, right? That don't appear nowhere else but Hebrew, right? Absalom. Or y'all also have a god called Itzam. That was a god, and the pictures of that god were all bones. The word Itzam or Kazam is a Hebrew word for bones. You see what I'm saying? So y'all language was Hebrew. Who got the flyer? Anybody have to make this flyer? Or we out of to make this flyer? We out. We got one up for you. Who got it? I want to show you this. I'll let you see it too. Now watch this. Watch this information. This is it's a book called Archaic Migrations to North America by Robert Merrick of the University of California, Riverside. It says, when the Spaniards came to Mexico and were standing guard on cold nights, they began to wonder who these Indians really were. Some of these soldiers of Bernardias among them advanced the idea that these Indians might be Jews. Furthermore, several of the Spaniards came up with the odd fact to support this theory. Indian priests in Zempoala had shown them how the obsidian sacrificial knives were also used for circumcision, which was known as a Jewish rite. Here goes, these Indians might be Jews. The Nahuatl, or the Uto-Aztecan language itself, has been shown to have very many Hebraic Semitic roots and can be traced to northwest Palestine, where parts of the Israelite tribe of Issachar settled, right? So this is the tribe of Issachar, right? Who's at this? Azan. Here, just give it to me. Sorry, put it down. So the tribe of Issachar. Give me a second. 12 and 13. I'm gonna show you something. Issachar, right? There's a certain. Every one of these 12 tribes has a blessing from God, right? Issachar had a blessing with telling time, right? How do you tell time? How do you do it? You see that? With the calendar, with what God gave us in the heavens. Sun, moon, and stars. This is how it happened. Now watch this. Go ahead.
First Chronicles 12 and 32.
Uh-huh.
And of the children of Issachar.
Issachar, read on.
which were men that had understanding of the time.
They were the men that had the understanding of the time. So here we have a scholar saying that the language spoken by the Aztecs was similar to the dialect of Hebrew spoken by the tribe of Issachar.
Right.
We go into the Bible and we see the tribe of Issachar had understanding of the time. We compare that to the Aztecs' understanding of the time and diligent calendar.
Mike, nobody is talking about Mormon stuff. Only Mormon stuff we've ever talked about is the stuff which you can see literally in museums. Nobody believes in the tablets necessarily. I cannot confirm or deny that. But just pay attention.
Work, right? Now, the word Aztec, do you know the word Aztec is in fact a Hebrew word? Az meaning assembly, Teka meaning time. The assembly of the timekeepers, basically that's what it means, right? Because that's what y'all did. Go ahead.
It says to know what Israel ought to do.
You see that? It says y'all used to have the Most High used to put signs into the sky through stars and various eclipses and whatever. Y'all had the ability to look up and get a message from God out of the stars and let us know how we should go into war. That's the type of blessing that the tribe of Issachar was doing, right?
And all their brethren were at their commandment.
So that's what y'all used to do. So y'all carried that all the way over here, right? Now, you remember that whole 2012 thing that happened, that whole craze, right? Now, the interesting thing about it is, if you actually study the calendar, it wasn't for 2012. It's actually for 2019, right? Now, I'm going to show you the interesting thing about that. It was the end of a 144,000 day period, right? 144,000. That's something that you see in the Bible over and over again. 144,000. You see that number over and over again. Do you know when the 144,000 day period started?
I would guess that when Jesus Christ was born, or the BC.
No, from the Aztec perspective.
Oh, no, I don't.
It started in 1619. Do you know what other significant event happened in 1619? The first slave ships was coming to Virginia, bringing black people from Africa to Virginia. This is when that 144,000 day period started. This is when oppression from the white man came at an all-time high to blacks, Hispanics, and Native Indians collectively across the board. At this point, we was all catching pure hell from these people. Then it would be.
Independent Dude says, my Zuni people speak Auto Aztecan language. The guy speaking on the street doesn't know what he's talking about. He said what it meant in Hebrew. Do you know Hebrew? I'm curious. Do you know Hebrew? Because if you don't know Hebrew, then how are you saying what he's saying is wrong? He's saying that's what it means in Hebrew. Or are you a linguist and you know that there are multiple other languages that have that same correlation between Hebrew and between that language? Because it doesn't seem like, I don't understand. If you don't know Hebrew, how would you know if he's saying that matches Hebrew words? How would you know that's wrong? Almost just sounds like you're being a contrarian.
Be a 144,000 day period, and at the end of that 144,000 day period, there was going to be a change in the rulership of the world. Of course, it wasn't going to be the end of the world. It was going to be a change in the rulership of this world. You see what I'm saying? Who was ruling the world 144,000 days ago? The white man. So that means all the Aztec and the Mayan calendar was showing is the timeline of when the white man was going to be taken out of power. And the Bible shows the same thing. You know how long the children of Israel was in slavery in Egypt in the Old Testament?
I remember they went through this for 40 years.
They went through for 40 years. Before that, it was about 400 years. 144,000 days is 400 years. So the prophecy that y'all had.
And Fuzz, I want you to bring up, our 1 second address.
13?
Sure. Yeah, second address 13.
starting at 40.
Yeah. Because
This is book of
because since there is no science at all, any science, even the science I don't agree with, that backs up that that there's a people group that started in Mesoamerica. Nothing proves that at all. What it does prove is, and you can tell by just DNA how everybody's DNA matches up to some degree, that we all originated in some place, and migration patterns happen. Unless you're saying that only one group of people had a completely different origin outside of everybody else, that everybody else is in this one part called the Levant, a part of basically Africa and the so-called Middle East. But no, your group of people specifically were all the way across somewhere else, even though no science backs that up. This area was uninhabited. And the Bible gives an account of people going into that land. Many of the people who are descendants who live in that area attest to this story before the Europeans even came. So you can fight against it as much as you want to. There's literally a town in Mexico, and their descendants say they all came from a man called Issachar. From the Bible, that town is there. They didn't just make that up. But going ahead and read this passage, because this is for the people who actually listen a little bit and who aren't just being contrarian to be contrarian. Go ahead and continue.
This is 2 Ezra chapter 13 and verse 40. Those are the 10 tribes which were carried away prisoners out of their own land in the time of Hosea the king, whom Salmanassar the king of Assyria led away captive, and you carried them over the waters. And so
carry them over where?
Carry them over the waters.
Okay.
And so came they into another land. But they took this counsel among themselves, that they would leave the multitude of the heathen and go forth into a further country, where never mankind dwelt, that they might there keep their statutes, which they never kept in their own land. And they entered into Euphrates by the narrow passages of the river. For the Most High then showed signs for them, and held still the flood till they were passed over. For through the country there was a great way to go, namely 1.5 years, and the same region is called Arsareth.
And so these same colonizers' descendants, which you guys are mostly more listening to, recognize that land Arsareth as America. What you still got to explain, Mike, is the Hebrew part. Explain that part. Didn't say that there weren't dozens of people who spoke all these languages, but you got to understand, you got to explain to me why they have correlations to Hebrew. You got to, I mean, if it has an origin story completely on the other side, completely a continent completely away and had no connection, explain the Hebrew. Now I get it, you might speak those languages, but apparently you don't speak Hebrew. Neither one of you do. If you can't explain where the Hebrew comes from, then I don't get this pushback. Yipper asks, what's the significance of 2019? I know shit started to hit the fan, 2020, and some economists say we are in a late stage capitalism. What that signifies, how we understand it, is that is a change that is going to be majorly coming. And as you start going into these different phases, different prophecies start to be enacted at different time periods. That is what we believe that the Mayan calendar was, that what they were predicting. They were predicting these different things that were going on, global changes and prophecies, that they had understanding of these things uniquely over most people. But the problem is, most Europeans who were trying to break this stuff down did not understand what any of it meant. Just like they don't understand that, they don't understand what the Bible's saying, they don't understand any of this stuff.
Who was it that was constantly trying to predict the end of the world coming in like X 2019 or
Nostradamus.
oh
Yeah, the
well,
Nostradamus was always trying to predict all these different things going on, and
no,
it was
in
always
India,
wild.
like an Indian tribe famous for that, like where their calendar ends, like
That's
as
the
the-
Mayan calendar.
oh, okay,
Was it Mayan or Aztec? I get them mixed up sometimes.
still
That
considered like I was about to bring down, like they are trying to measure out the times, but this comes from Second Ezra chapter 9 and verse 1. He answered me then and said, measure thou the time diligently in itself. When thou seest part of the signs past, which I told thee before, then shalt thou understand
I'll be right back.
that it is the very same time when the highest will begin to visit the world which he made. So they may have missed the mark by a little bit, but I would say that they are influenced from the writings of Esdras, that they need to start measuring the time diligently. They could have had a couple of signs, like visited them or they interpreted them in some way, shape, or form and made their predictions from there. It's my guess anyway.
All right, I'm back. Here's the point I'm trying to make when I keep bringing up the questions about the language, because you guys are looking one-sided. Mostly everybody here speaks English, of course. If I told you these English words, certain words match up to French words, how many people in here would be able to tell me if I'm right or not? How many people would speak French to know if I'm being correct in that statement? Well, if you don't know French, you wouldn't be able to tell me I'm wrong on telling you that it has French ties in that language. And just a note, 60 to 70% of English has French words in it. A lot of people don't know that. So when you start studying back into language and stuff like that, you can learn different things. But if you're just so dead set on saying no to everything, you're not going to get any of this stuff. So let me bring up, speaking of languages, I'm going to bring back up another video just going into more similarities. Now, is it going to be every single word? No, but there shouldn't be any similarities according to the logic which is being laid out. There should be no similarities. None of these words should have any ties, even though earlier in the video we already showed some language ties. None of this stuff should fit. None of it.
America, before the colonizers came.
Skip a little bit ahead.
Or in religious ceremonies justify the acceptance of this ethnological theory. Rodin's chief argument in support of his view is the language of the Indians in Hispaniola, Cuba, Jamaica, and the adjoining islands. He contends that it has many resemblances to Hebrew. In fact, he even calls it corrupted Hebrew. He asserts that such names as Cuba and Haiti are Hebrew, which Cuba means large tent in Hebrew, and Haiti, it goes back to the Hittites, all right, are Hebrew. And they were first applied by the earliest caciques, the chiefs or leaders, which comes from the Hebrew kaizen. That's where you get the word cacique from, who discovered, kaizen, it means chief in Hebrew. It says, who discovered and peopled the islands. The names.
Pause and answer this real quick, because this is for the people out there also who are trying to learn. You guys need to be able to hear these back and forth so I can explain this. It says the Mayan calendar never ended. It repeats. It's circular. Time repeats. It does not end. Literally all indigenous cultures believe this, while the Bible believe in an end time. And wrong. The Bible does not talk about an end time. You don't know Bible. That's what I'm trying to keep telling you. But for somebody who doesn't know the Bible, you keep trying to talk about the Bible over and over and over. The Bible does not speak of an end time.
There's
The
there's the end of an era,
end
an
of
age.
errors, things change, cycles, all of that is in the Bible. That's what it talks about. It doesn't talk about an end. What you're not getting is when it talks about, when it used certain words, you got to understand where it was translated from. If you don't understand what it's being translated from, you don't understand what the original context is. You're only understanding what the English word is saying. For instance, let me give you one. To worship. There's more than one word for worship in the Bible. In Greek, you have proskuneo. That's one. Latreia. That's another one. Those have two different understandings. One is literally worshiping. One is just giving reverence and bowing down. But if you just look at the English word, you're not going to know the difference. Another thing, when it says God, God is a colloquial Germanic word. God literally means a power. Are there multiple levels of power in the world? Yes. But if you don't know that, you're going to keep making these kind of statements that are off. You're not dealing with Christians here. So let's just stop with this, with a lot of this. And I'll give you one last one. Let's see. What is it? World. Definition for world in the Bible has 3 different definitions from Greek. Also, cosmos, eon, oikomene. But if you don't know that there's 3 different definitions, you don't understand what it's saying in that context.
So I got a precept.
He's not talking about end times. He's talking about certain processes to happen. It's not an end. It's an end of different people's eras. There's a different end of reigns. It literally talks about there was the time of the Sumerians. Their time period ended. Another empire came up and became the hegemony in the world. That was the Sumerians, Babylonians, same thing. Then you had the Egyptians. They had their time period. They went down. You had the Medo-Persians. They had their time period. They ended. The Greeks, they had their time when they ruled the world. They went down. The Romans had their time. These are all time periods ending. It doesn't mean a complete end. And that's what I'm saying. You guys are jumping to conclusions and not having full understanding of what's being talked about here. But sorry, go ahead, folks.
So this is 2nd Ezra chapter 6 and verse 9. For Esau is the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth. So it can't. This completely goes against your notion of the Bible talking about an end time, end of the planet, end of all days that are supposed to happen.
Well, no, to them it sounds like the end, right? But if you go into what that word is, when it talks about the end, it's talking about the end of an age, a time period. But you guys got Christianity so much like in your thinking that it's clouding what we're trying to teach here. This is not Christianity. We do not believe in some freaking sky mansions and everybody burning forever and ever in a revolving flame. That's not what this is. Sorry, go ahead, Buzz.
No, that was it.
So let's get back into this real quick. All right.
The rivers and of persons in use among the natives are derived from the Hebrew. For example, Aina from the Hebrew word Ain, meaning stream. Jonas from Jonah. Yaki from Jacob. Urias from Urias. Sabio from Seba. Maisa from Moshi. The names of their tools are their little canoes, concerts, or the name of Akshi for pepper, the name of the storehouses for maize, grain, and the like, all point to the Hebrew language. So we can clearly see that there is a connection between the Indian dialect and the Hebraic dialect, right? And we're going to exemplify that even further in the presentation. Next slide.
And let me give this declaration because I've been hearing a lot of this pushback. Not every single language, not every, because for one, many the tribes all spoke different versions of whatever tribal languages. There were many different tribal languages. So we're not saying, oh, well, if there's this one word, it's the same as every single tribe. Because I realize I got to literally put that disclaimer out there, which I think that this should be obvious. This is not saying every tribe is basically, literally the same.
Mexica. Mexica is Aramaic for anointed. The ancient Mexicans bore that name. Mexica, Mexica, right? The Mexicans. And you can see the dark-skinned Mexicans to the right playing Patoli, an ancient game. But we can see that this name, which is Aramaic for the Mashiach or anointed, that's the name that they
and by the way, Aramaic is a version of Hebrew.
Or to represent their people. That's where you get the word Mexico from. It's an bastardization of Mexica. Next slide. Oaxaca or Oaxaca. The O in the Spanish codices is pronounced Wa. The X in the Spanish codices is pronounced Sh because they couldn't pronounce every word that the Nahuatl people or the Mexica people were speaking because, first of all, in Spanish, you don't have the Sh. You don't have the Sh sound. So they had to make a workaround in the codices so the Spanish reader could pronounce these names. So O in the Spanish codices is pronounced Wa. The X in the Spanish codices is pronounced Sh. The correct pronunciation of Oaxaca is Oaxaca, denoting wages are higher. And there's the Hebrew phonetics right there, Oaxaca. That's how you say it in Hebrew. And that shows the validity of our claim that the ancient Mexicans or Mexicans are of the tribe of Issachar. Next slide. Shammai or Shemay. Now, Jamaica, real quick, a disclaimer. Jamaica is not supposed to be pronounced Jamaica. That's a mispronunciation of the original land name, Jamaica. That's how you're supposed to say it, or Jamaica or Jamaica. Modern day Jamaica. Shammai comes from the Strong's H80 and 85. It means to hear. And Ka comes from Strong's H8660, Kawa, meaning dwelling or accord. Assyrian, Koa, dwelling or land. And when we see that word Koa, like barbacoa, within the Indian dialect, which is clearly Assyrian, which has ties to the Hebrew, Kawa. So Shemai Ka means, transliterated correctly, as land of Simeon. And the Ka in the Arawak language means land. Now, if you Google this, you're going to get a myth that's been pushed out there and pushed on our people that the word Shemaiah means land of wood or water, a land of trees and water. We're going to break that down, and that's a fallacy that cannot be proven. Shemaiah cannot mean land of wood and water. We do not find those words within its composition. The Arawak words for trees and water are as follows: Ara, denoting wood or tree; Uini, meaning water. Thus, Ara plus Uini could not be equal to Shemaiah. Myth busted. We can clearly show you with philology, okay, that composition cannot equal Shemaiah. All of this was created to cover up the true meaning of these lands, the true Hebraic connection that our people have, the indigenous and Negroid people that are in the Americas have with the Hebrew people of antiquity. And that's just the plot that they plot against us. It's right here in Psalms, the book of Psalms, chapter 83, verse 4. They have said, "Come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance." That the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. They plot to keep us from remembering who we are. So that's why you can see, go on Google, Wikipedia, oh, that means lands of trees and water. Yeah, right. It means the land of Simeon. That's what it means. Shammai means heard. What does Simeon come from? To be heard. Next slide. Borica. The island name Boricua has a clear connection with the Hebrew. Barika, meaning well, Barikim, meaning blessed, Barikaya, Strong's H1296, means blessed of Yah. So you can see the clear, concise connection with the Hebraic dialect and the Indian dialect, or the Arawak dialect. First Chronicles 15 and 17, where you can find that.
You're muted. Marcus, muted.
Oh, sorry. Where he's getting these sources from, where he's showing this is the translations of the word, which is saying in Hebrew for the Bible. So this is it. I don't know. I guess you guys are going to say all this stuff is just coincidences, that these words have these similarities and these just a weird coincidence. But where does Nahalatan come from? What language family is that? I would love to hear that, independent dude. Where, in fact, explain what language family any of the Native American languages come from. Please explain that to me. Because they'll tell you most languages, well, this is Indo-European, this is Asiatic, this is Afro-Asiatic, this is that. But for some reason, this one language family doesn't get a name. It has no origin. You don't find that strange at all, that it has no language family and it has no language family or origin? Seriously. And then he's already told you that Azteca goes back to Hebrew, but yet you just ignore that, right? And there's a reason why. There's a reason why, Yipper. I forgot where, but some African words sound Japanese, and I could go into it. But here's the thing, independent dude. You said your logic can apply to Hebrew languages too. Yes, but here's the thing. Have you done any study in the Hebrew languages to say that there is no connection? Have you? Because if you haven't, then you're just, I don't even get where you're coming from with all your pushback. Because if you haven't studied the language to debunk it, then they're literally showing you from a scholarly source that literally shows what these words in Hebrew and the ties to these words, but you just are just talking out of your ass, I guess. All right, let's let him continue.
Brother Berekaya. And what did we bring up earlier? Prior, the first slide was about the children in the building of a city continues a man's name. And we can see that through Boricua, Berekaya, his seed, his children, his city. The city is named after these ancient forefathers. And that's where you get Boricua comes from, the root word Barik, which means blessed in Hebrew, right? So it doesn't mean noble lords, none of that. That's poor scholarship, whoever pushes that, because they probably just got that from the website or whatever. No real research went into it. No real philology or meta-thesis went into, coming up with that ideology. Next slide. Genesis 49:26, it says, the blessings of thy father have prevailed above the blessings of my progenitors, and unto the utmost bound of the everlasting hills. They should be on the head of Joseph and on the crown of the head of him that was separate from his brethren. So the Lord basically was prophesying about Joseph, that he'll have blessings to the utmost bound of the everlasting hill. The utmost bound of everlasting hills is the Americas. That's the utmost part of the earth, the Western Hemisphere. Proving what? That the 10 tribes came to America. I have plenty of videos exemplifying that fact on my channel. Check them out.
Here, I want to respond. Yipper was saying something there. It says, I forgot where, but some African words sound Japanese, and they're somewhere in East Africa. Well, not only some words, if you look at phenotypes of some people in certain parts of Africa, Khoisan, for example, Khoisan have very similar features to a lot of Japanese people. And there's also their language is also tonal. They that's something which is unique into certain languages. That's not every language is tonal. Literally can say the same word, just say it differently, and it has a completely different understanding or meaning. Let me see if I can bring that up real quick. Uh, let's see, what was it? I was going to bring up Khoisan. Khoisan. No, you're supposed to do that. Oh, never mind. Hold on. Back up. Back up. Back up. Back up. And I wanted to bring up the Khoi. Yeah, if you see the image of just even looking, Khoisan people have very similar features to Japanese people. Now, maybe some of the other people will just think that that's just a weird coincidence, or I don't believe that it's a coincidence that their language is similar and their features are similar. So let's bring it up and show you Khoisan. No, it's a Khoisan, I guess, woman and grandmother. Khoisan man there, and they're the ones who have the language, which is very similar to Japanese. And DNA is showed, which I'm not, on some things I don't trust DNA 150%, but DNA actually has been able to track that. I'm trying to remember, what was it? This one Asian, I'm trying to remember, was it Japanese or China? I think it was Japan. No, it was China, where, yes, Nelson Mandela would be Khoisan. I believe he was Chinese, and he was trying to substantiate that Chinese people were the first people, that they originated separate from the other groups of people. What he was able to find is that every single person from China originates from Africa. That's what he was able to find. And so DNA proved that Asiatic base came out of Africa. Ifos and Asia and Khoisan have nothing to do more with it. No, DNA shows it, Mike. What are you talking about? Literal DNA proves that. So don't go into no. Where are you? I really, please send me where you are getting your studying and scholarship from, because you're just throwing out random stuff when there's DNA that literally goes against what you're saying. Literally goes against what you're saying. Not only, and here's the other thing. If you're saying that it's from adaptation to windy plains, then why didn't it affect any of the other people who live right there too? Why isn't, jeez Louise. No, what I'm saying is Chinese DNA researchers have proven that all of the people in Asia came from Africa. That is a fact. They all can see the trace roots of Africa from their DNA. They didn't just originate there. Let's see. Yeah, we're almost at the 2-hour mark, but I'll go back into a little bit more of his presentation. And then next week, we're going to go into actual more archaeology, stuff that has not been debunked. And I'll show the receipts that it hasn't been debunked. Well, if everybody came from Africa like 100,000 years ago, then how did Native Americans just evolve on their own in Mesoamerica? You're contradicting yourself. You're contradicting yourself right there. Of course, Black Africans couldn't have existed 100,000 years ago, if I even believe that people go back 100,000 years, but they couldn't have existed because Africa wasn't a continent. It wasn't a name. It was not called Africa. And majority of the people were melanated at that point in time. So I mean, even science proves that. So, I mean, where are you getting this stuff? But I'll play a little bit more of this.
Discovered America was the latest one. Checked it out. But this scripture clearly shows the connection of the blessings of Joseph, i.e., Berakim, a Berik, which means blessed. And that's where you get the word Berika from. So when someone says they're Boricuan, they're talking about they're connected to those indigenous people that were originally there, which were Hebrew. That's why they called the island Berikim, because it was a blessed island. All right, the weather, the animals, the sea, everything about it is blessed. The people having those multitude of children, being able to populate the way they do, that's a blessing. So Berika means a blessed land, okay, or blessed people. Next slide. Tola. Let's deal with the Toltec Indians, right? The Toltec Indians, they have a very strong Hebraic tie. Tola, a son of Issachar, fathered the Tolites or Toltec people, who obviously.
I want to respond. I see signs there, my good buddy. It says, I guess the bottom line is that religion is the basis for most, if not all, racism, Cain Tower of Babel. No, I don't believe that. Well, complicated in that statement. Do I believe that racism had its roots? I mean, you can literally go back into the Bible and see that racism has always been a thing when you start, especially talking about the Romans and the Greeks. There was a lot of racism, but the differentiation was not race; it was tribal mostly. It was tribes in different nations, and different nations, of course, had their different cultures. Some of the deepest burials in Europe have Black people. That is correct. And if you look into, if you look back further enough, talking about to like the Etruscans and the Minoans, those original, and even like Cheddar Man, some of the original people into Europe were melanated people before Indo-Europeans actually even went into Europe. And you can literally trace the migration patterns when you start looking for like the Yamnaya people and all that stuff when they were going into the Caucasian steppes. And so you could see like where some of this stuff that started happening, and you can go back and literally study and see the people. I don't know if you guys don't believe, just look up Cheddar Man. Cheddar Man's the oldest remains in Europe, and that was definitely a melanated person. Let's see what else. Fuzz is it's funny. He says, Fuzz, you're afraid to let the natives speak. For me, honestly, the only thing which really separates natives from Latinos is honestly who took over. So if he's in one place, how does that make him different and not a native? That's what I don't get. So I guess in your understanding, the Aztecs and Mayans would have been considered natives, correct? Well, if Aztecs and Mayans were natives and then they got conquered by Spaniards and so they're not called natives anymore, does that not make them natives? I don't think you're listening to your logic, independent dude, because it's not adding up. Yes, definitely distractions, but I feel like people are able to learn and able to hear, you know, because when people come with the different arguments that they have, you're able to hear how they don't add up and don't make sense repeatedly. You're literally saying, Fuzz, you have a one-sided. So, Fuzz, being Latino, is a native. But you are being dismissive of a native because he doesn't fit into what you look at as a tribal native. That is the ultimate being dismissive. And just like Mike earlier was dismissive towards Misha. But apparently, if people don't agree with your viewpoint, then apparently you are dismissive of them also. Because that's my point. And so, Mike says, I don't call myself English. Well, the natives down south are still indigenous rather than Spanish conquered them. Exactly. So Fuzz would still be classified as a native. You don't get how that makes sense? Also, here's the thing. By that logic also, do you guys realize that natives were in slavery also, and some of them actually mixed with African slaves? Or you don't count them all of a sudden? Also, there were natives who helped African slaves escape, and they mixed. You don't think that counts also? It's almost sounding very, very segregational, you're thinking here, Mike. And independent also. It's almost like you're feeling like, I don't even want to be close to classified with any of these people that I feel are beneath me. That's kind of what it's sounding like to me. Almost like you're kind of looking down on others. Just curious if that's the viewpoint. Just curious. I don't know. I don't know. Correct me. And here's the other thing. If he does have some African blood in him, do you possibly have European blood? So does that make you better because you have possibly European blood and he has possibly African blood? Does that make him less than you?
Follows the Spanish. What garbage.
The only difference was who conquered who. A lot of natives now speak English because, hello, the people who took over majority of the land spoke English. And the people south of it either spoke Spanish or Portuguese. There's no difference there. And it's the same thing when you go into certain parts of the islands where they spoke French. The only difference is you had a different slave master. But go on ahead, keep thinking that you're somehow separate and set aside. And now you're talking about, well, now you're saying you're half black. And but if you're half black and then you're like, well, I bet Misha has some. From what you're saying, you probably have more black than Fuzz does. So wouldn't that, by your own understanding, make him more native than you? I mean, come on, logic it's not hard to keep these things together, but because you guys have this spirit of just disagreement, you're not even listening to your argument. It's not even sound. It's not even staying together. It's like really like kind of sad, the argument, this quality of argument that you have. Yeah, I'm half black, but connected to my indigenous roots. Okay, and so okay. They took some natives to boarding schools in Canada, right? So those people who had their languages beaten and stripped all the way out of them, they're no longer indigenous because they didn't hold on to their culture. Is that what you're saying, Mike? So I'm guessing an indigenous person who had that culture taken all the way out of them doesn't have the right to speak for indigenous people. And also, you're literally trying to speak for his indigenous tribe. How does that work? I'm trying to figure even what how that works. He's a completely different set of an indigenous tribe, and you're trying to tell him that his point of view does not matter. And he is not able to speak for it, because it's not about speaking for some kind of us. You're not allowing him to speak for himself. Fuzz, would you like to answer that? Go on ahead.
3 generations of so-called Puerto Ricans. That's how far back my dad goes.
So I guess Boricua, I guess that's not, that they don't count as indigenous people. Being that being that the people in the Caribbean were the first ones to be enslaved and slaughtered and go through all that from the Europeans. I mean, it's kind of snobby the way you're sounding, Mike. Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. The Tainos. So you're saying basically the Taino people of the Caribbean that their roots don't matter. You're saying that their roots don't matter. Their say-so doesn't matter. That's literally what you're saying, Mike. I mean, you got kind of a little bit of a supremacist ideology going on here. That's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing like some supremacy. And it's kind of disheartening, Mike. Little frustrating. It's almost sounding like some of the mentality of the colonizers. You've kind of like incorporated some of that into your own thinking. Do you have a superiority complex going on there? Because you did just say that you were half black or a good chunk black. So what you're saying is that even though according to like native cultures, you would be a half breed, you're saying that your say so matters more than somebody who has more indigenous blood? I mean, you guys said no, Fuzz. Let us talk. So talk. I'm enjoying this. Please let me know more about your supremacy and how you look down on the natives who had their cultures beaten and stolen out of them. Please tell me more about how you look down on them. Hello? Like I said before, anytime I can put a link in the chat and we could talk about it. We don't even have to talk on Bible because just logically, what you're saying, there are so many errors, and I feel like there are so many problems with what you're saying and espousing. You're not going to respond to the supremacy? Respond. What? I'm waiting.
They need to target me just because they can't. They need to target me because they can't address your points.
Just in case he's saying that he can't hear me. Please listen to you, Mike. Please respond. Please explain your supremacy. Independent dude says you're deleting comments. Let his comments go through.
They've only been timed out when you keep debunking their points. But all right.
Yeah, let him talk. Because I'm hearing a lot of supremacy. That's what I'm hearing. And for some reason, I'm getting a really bad signal. I don't know why I'm getting a bad signal all of a sudden. It's almost like the signal is trying to save their ass. Oh, I mean, he's not deleting nothing. Go on ahead, respond. Well, no, Misha, he doesn't want to connect with anything. He just wants to say that he's superior. He believes that he, even though through his logic would be a so-called half-breed, is superior to you. An independent dude says, I think the point Mike was making is that Fuzz isn't bothering to reconnect with his Taino roots. Well, for one, there is not a lot of research there's not a lot that you could even find as far as Tainos. There's not a lot that you can connect back to. So if somebody's culture was ripped away, stolen, how the hell do you have the nerve to sit there and try to insult them? That's my point.
Our true roots are being Hebrews. That's what I'm trying to reconnect with.
If we're able to see, in fact, in Puerto Rico, that there are an enormous amount of Hebrew artifacts on the damn island, that's what we're connecting to. Because you know what? Unlike you guys, we do believe in what our historians say and our researchers say. We don't sit there and just pay attention to what the fucking white man says. Whether the white man says this or he says that, this is what you guys are paying attention to. Because I guarantee you, no native is sitting up there going through all this research. Are you going to tell me that? Because I guarantee you, in Puerto Rico, they are. Being of indigenous ancestry doesn't make one an expert, especially if they're disconnected from their indigenous roots. What we're trying to tell you is he still has a right to speak and voice his opinion, and you guys shouldn't be trying to be dismissive of it because he's had it taken away from him. Now, I honestly believe that finding out where he actually ties to before getting to the Americas is actually more important. But if you guys only are concerned with what you've learned in Mesoamerica, and you think that that's the end all be all, then that's fine with you. But that doesn't dismiss his point, and that doesn't dismiss anything that he has to add to this context. And it also doesn't allow you to decide that you're going to be the speaker and the be all end all for all indigenous people. Well, here's the difference. You believe he isn't reconnecting. We believe he is connecting. You cannot believe Hebrew is our roots or not. You cannot believe it. But you know what? There's plenty of research which dates to it. Plenty of it. But you want to keep your head into just, whatever you freaking want to believe. And you don't want to study or research any damn thing. But you, independent dude, and Mike don't get to sit here and tell him what's not his culture and what is his culture, because you don't know it. You yourself already said that you are from Mesoamerica. Mesoamerica are not Tainos. So how do you have the nerve to try to tell a Taino what their history is? And this is just like silliness, but hopefully those out there were listening, were able to get some useful information. And I'll let these two supremacists, go in their own thinking and go with what they believe. Yes, go howl to the moon, whatever you feel like doing. But I'm not gonna waste my time with that. And Misha, you said it earlier, 2/3. 2/3. So, for those who want to be edified and learn, we will be back next week with part 3, and we're going to be showing actual archaeology research. These guys can sit there and just pay attention to whatever Europeans tell them, whether pro or against, and just go with that. That's fine and dandy. I mean, I know my ancestors would be rolling in their graves that you're trusting that I was trusting the white man. But hey, do you? If that's who that's who you trust, knock yourself out. But we're gonna leave it on that note. Thank you, my brother Fuzz. Sorry for the disrespect you had to deal with from these scoffers. Misha says the water.
I'm more sad that we couldn't get more out of the video that we were trying to go through and actually do more edifying.
We'll get into more next week. And then I feel that people need to have this back and forth, because when they need to be able to see this back and forth, because then I want to see if they come in here next week, I want to see them sit there and argue with their people. Because here's the thing about it. You can't sit there and say what the culture is and what it's not. Nobody has some authority to try to decide or decipher or say anything. And when there are people who know more about your own damn culture than you do, who are sitting over there going to Israel, who are completing rituals, how in the hell would they know the rituals? That's the thing. You guys have all these, this can't be, that's not that, but you don't have any answers for these connections. Zero answers for these connections. And if you don't have an answer for these connections, then why are you running your damn mouth? The Bible says when you come to the house of the Lord, keep your foot. That means shut up. But that said, I'm Marcus Cage, my bud Fuzz Ephraim, and thank you for everybody else who came in here. Sorry for anybody who saw me get a little bit agitated with these two. When I hear people who I used to believe a lot of the crap which these guys say. Oh, that's all debunked. This is the, and then when I started doing the research and I figured out how nonsensical it was, and then I started looking at the ties to who are the people who are debunking it. Who's debunking it? Doubt they even know that. When you start going into a lot of this DNA studies, doubt you know who owns that. Doubt you know who's doing this. But instead, just think first. Just think that we're trying to perpetrate some kind of weird scam on you that we don't benefit from for some weird reason. Whatever. Some kind of weird paranoia and delusion. I don't get it. But this has been Hebrew Apologetics with Marcus and Fuzz. And, we're going to say Kwam Yasharallah and Shalom.